tonight is Wednesday, July the, 9th. And this is Management 3025. Learning curves. A learning curve, usually we draw it like this, where we have time on the horizontal axis and proficiency or some measure of it on the vertical axis, up to a maximum proficiency of 100%. And it's basically a visual representation of how fast does it take someone to learn to do a particular skill. Remember learning the keyboard, or as we knew it, type? Right? What was it like the first couple of weeks learning to type? Use a keyboard. Yeah, okay. And once you learned the home keys, it started speeding up, and then you could go off the home keys a little better. Here's what generally it looks like. For the first introductory period of time, and that will vary, of course, with what you're doing, your proficiency is going to wind up staying pretty low. Kind of like that. And somewhere about this point in time, you're looking at it typically and saying, I will never learn how to do this. This is not me, okay? I'm not any good at fill in the blank, right? Math, typing, PE, you name it, right? If you keep going for a while, though, with most things, and given an adequate system of instruction or support, once you get into it and swim around a little bit, you start learning quicker. Once you learn the home keys, you're able to move off of them. And so over the next period of time, your proficiency increases rather dramatically quickly. And then once you get up here approaching maximum proficiency, as you continue to work, your rate of improvement begins to slow down and perhaps even plane out. Okay? So this is a typical learning curve, something like that. My philosophy with respect to technology, like cameras, we talked about Dr. Searcy and video stuff, is to wait until other people have figured out the first part so they can then teach me at minimum cost and aggravation and frustration to both themselves and myself. So when somebody gets all this figured out, I'm ready to learn. That to me is a more efficient use of my time. Since we're on that topic, what would you think that this particular learning curve looks like right here in red? What does that represent? Quick learner, or an easy task to learn, easy skill to learn. And this one? Slow learner and never going to be really good at it anyway. Okay? What's that? Cute.
Someone's not trying.
Florida State University. Pick on a college. In Texas, we always say Texas A&M. Okay? Cool. And again, just a kind of part of the terminology, learning curves and what they represent. When we say this thing has a really steep learning curve, right, it typically means that this is going to be a real bear to try to master. It's got an easy learning curve. It's not too hard to master. How would you rate this course and learning how to do this course? Would you call that difficult?
No.
Moderate.
Moderate?
Yeah.
Difficult?
If you put the time in, you're going to learn it.
I'm not so sure. I was going to say, I'm not so sure whether it's difficult. It just requires a lot of effort and time.
Good. I think that's kind of where I was hoping you would take me. I don't think anything you are asked to do in this course is terribly difficult.
No.
It takes conscientious time management, self-discipline, focus.
Discretionary effort. It's a grind, more or less.
Discretionary effort will pay off because we will spot those pieces of work that you submit that reflect discretionary effort. And that will be noted. Competency 3, you say again, was on networking, right?
Yeah.
How long is that? You got to draw a little chart of some kind that you get to design if you want, right? And then you get to discuss what you're going to do to broaden and deepen your network, right? How long would that be? Finished product, how many pages?
It's 30, not 30.
Mine's 6.
I'm on your resume.
As many as it takes.
I like that philosophy, whatever it takes, right? WIT. But if you're going to present this and say, this is evidence of the caliber of work and effort that I put into my work, how long should it be?
Well, it also has to be clean and professional. You don't want it to drag.
Right.
So it has to be concise and actually meaningful. So not every person you meet is going to be reflecting of every piece of network material. Everything is going to be more in line with your career path and how you can better your career path and how various cadence.
Each of you are going to have your own views on how long it should be to suit you. But the killer on this submission is, what does your boss want? And if you don't know what the boss expects, you don't know whether we want 2 pages or 12 pages.
Well, I think in the bottom of your thing there, you said it was open format, so use it wisely. So I think that was kind of...
What do you suppose that phrase meant? Open format, so use it wisely. In other words, design this like you want, but be smart about it.
Opportunity to show that you're professional and that you know when it's time to rein it in, rather than having a 12-page long thing that has every person you've ever met in your entire life, but enough to be able to substantiate that you have a good basis for networking to start with, and then deciding, you know, how you're going to go about it. Enough to explain it, but enough to keep from rambling on.
That's a really good, you sound like a politician or an economist. I can't decide. I'm not going to give you a definitive answer, but somewhere in here.
And that's kind of, I mean, you kind of left it open, and that's the way I interpreted it.
I left it open very intentionally, and I left those directions very intentionally because they are somewhat vague.
Yes, they are.
Very.
It's also meant to kind of find people that are more professional in their approach and also in the design of their work. Whereas someone who's going to throw in their paint this and circles and happy faces or something like that. Unprofessional versus professional, format style.
Unprofessional is out of limits, right? That's all.
Not as professional or as clean cut, should I say.
Okay. My point would be that, and I'm using me in the setting, but imagine this in the business world, right? The real world. You don't get a lot of direction. You don't really know what's wanted. Do you overdo it or underdo it? Overdo it. Overdo it until what? Until the person comes back and says, well, I don't need that much detail. Okay, but I can do it if you want me to, right? So when you're not sure, overdo it. And so if you turn something into me that was 12 pages, I don't want to read it. But at least I will know that you can put that kind of depth into a document. And remember we said your depth of your network, what is the depth as opposed to the breadth?
How close your relationships are with those individuals and your comfort zone with them as far as you being able to expect things from them and them being able to expect things from you.
Again, those are somewhat vague terms. The depth of a network may refer to within a given circle of very close friends, how many do you have? Or it may refer to within your industry network, how deep can you go? At what levels of experience do those people have who are part of your network? How far down into that profession can you drill? And breadth might mean groups close to you, groups further out, or it might mean, that would mean I want to be actively networked in this field, my profession, this field, my community volunteer activities, this field, my physical activity, personal development. And so depth and breadth are, again, subject to some definition. And if you're not sure what the definitions are, what do? Ask, because they're very subjective here. You don't know what I meant by depth and breadth. So it's not unfair for you to say, what do you mean by depth and breadth? And if I don't give you any guidance, then yeah, sure. You're on your own. But sometimes you need clarification. I have intentionally designed the competencies and even the writings in this course to be vague, to see how you deal with them. And most of all, to inculcate within you the idea that when you ain't sure, overkill. How do you prepare for the midterm in this course? you be prepared to teach the first half of the course when you walk into the exam. You know it as backwards and forwards as you can. Nobody ever got penalized for knowing too much or being too prepared. And if you don't know what you're going into, you go in there as prepared as you humanly can. Just general rule of life. Okay? How'd we get on that topic? What else is on your mind? I got half a dozen things going in and out of my mind at my age. You know, some of them don't stay very long. I wonder what the hell I was thinking about. Anything else? I'm sorry?
The human resource article that you had sent out?
I sent you an article on at least one view on the fact that the field of human resource management may be splitting into two fields. What were the two fields? Do you recall?
Administrative and just working with people.
Let's call it, for lack of better terms, because I don't remember any particular terms in the article, the routine administrative HR functions, right? Recruiting, selection, training, development, compensation, routine human resource management administration, and strategic human resource management. Strategic meaning what?
How the organization's going to handle.
What does the future hold?
Yeah.
And how are we going to adapt to it to best prosper? Not just survive, prosper. And so in the field of human resource management, what does that mean? I'll give you a couple examples. We call them, if you like, macro forces. Big forces out there that are affecting human resource management. What would you judge the quality of a high school graduate in the United States to be today coming in as an employee? Bare minimum. There was a letter in the Gainesville Sun today by a general contractor in Gainesville who argued we need to stop trying to kick the immigrants out of this country. They're the only people that show up for work. And his argument was, in his contracting construction business, he hires people with a high school diploma, and of the Americans that he hires, the incidence of never come back to go to work, show up late for work, show up for a week's worth of work and then want to have a week off, wants a pay raise because he's been here for 2 weeks. He says those sorts of things are endemic in a lot of the American workforce. He says if you hire an immigrant, he'll show up on time every day. He'll work hard all day, and once he knows what he's doing, he'll give you good quality work as a general rule. He says we don't have that kind of work ethic in our population these days.
You say why?
No, I think he was careful about that. The why of that to me is what I call a two-pitcher question. It takes at least 2 pitchers of beer to cover all that, right? And get the answers right.
I would say cakes on that.
I can imagine a whole weekend in a keg. Yeah. Why is that endemic in our society today? Let's just do that for a couple of minutes. Any opinions? Eric?
That I would say is probably more of a satisficing. That is the ultimate satisficing, is how we treat our children, how they're taught in school, how they're raised to just be a C student. Just show up, pass, breathe, don't kill anyone, don't die yourself, and have a nice day. You participated, you get your diploma.
I always heard that parents over the last, pick your time frame, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, are really concerned their kids do very, very well, and so they tend to become helicopter parents. Help them with their homework, do their homework, and I think there is that section. I think there's another section where the children are totally neglected and left to do on their own. I've never really heard the term satisficing applied to our educational system
It's been dumbed
by
down.
design.
There's
Huh?
no the amount of competition that is expected between the students to make the A's, to make the B's, to really work hard isn't there.
There's
It's
no
actually-
competition.
It's negated. There is
It's
no-
pretty much show up and get the trophy.
That's what it is. It's an entitlement mentality.
Okay.
And over 25 years worth of hiring people and managing people, it has become epidemic in the last 5 years. Younger people are coming up. They've been coddled. Your helicopter thing. That's kind of what I call it. Mom and Dad's always either been there to take care of it for them, or it's all about participation. The competition factors pulled out of. It's viewed as an evil thing instead of something that can actually grow and develop a kid where they got to learn.
Why
Right.
do you suppose
Figure
we've
that out.
gotten there, though? Why have we devolved to that point in so much of, not all of, so much of our society?
The values are taught or not taught at home.
Why not?
I mean, why are they not being?
Yeah, I'm trying to drive down to the root cause of all this, or causes. I don't know.
There's a lot of people.
Say again?
There's a lot of people that have never been told no in their life.
Why?
Yeah, that's one.
Why?
I think people's priorities
call
have
it
been mixed up
DHS.
over the years.
Why?
Well, I think that, like, for instance, nowadays people are looking more to get, like, more money just so they could buy cars and more clothes and more houses, which, they
So
take
people
that
are-
over priority rather than working hard and taking pride in your work. And yeah, I think it's just happened over a course of time. I mean, I don't know that there's a reason why, rather than it's just we're evolving that way.
I think some of it too might be that when you get a generation like we are, and you work and you struggle, you don't want your kids to work and you struggle. So you start to give, and before you realize it, you've given so much, you haven't taught them the values to stand on their own 2 feet.
It's something you got to be careful with. I tell my wife all the time. I'm like, and when I look at my kids, most other kids would look at me and go, I probably wouldn't want that guy as a dad because I'm pretty hard on my kids. But even still, I go back and look. I'm telling my wife all the time. I'm like, we've spoiled these kids in so many different ways. Even though we may even be setting a higher standard for them to do stuff and holding them more accountable than some other kids. But
Why?
It's pervasive in our society.
Why?
I think it's a lot of it's because none of us have really known tough times.
Why?
People aren't allowed to fail.
Huh?
They're not allowed to fail.
Why?
Children aren't allowed to fail. They're not allowed to say, you did wrong. You screwed up.
Why? Why are they not allowed to
It's a
fit?
two-part thing. There's been a lot of psychoanalysis going on. I think there's been a lot of, psychology has told us now that, after so many studies that, that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. But then I think there's the technology feature that's come in the last several decades that have made things easier.
Okay.
So we expect everything to become easier because, now we've got a cart instead of a horse and buggy or a bicycle that we have to go out and hitch up. Now all we have to do is put some gas in the car and go,
But in the same
Okay.
sense, I don't know that makes it necessarily easier, just different because we have things that are easier just because we have internet and we can get access at our fingertips. You still have to work, overtime to pay for those things and overtime to pay for the house and to pay for the phone company and to put gas in your car and to pay to work on it. And if you can't afford it, you have to work on it. So in the same sense, back when you had horses and carriages and you had to go out and get your own eggs, that is simple too. That's why they call it simple life. So what is easier?
And when you weren't working so many hours, you were able to spend time with the children and teach them the way of working and teaching them the value of succeeding at something because they earned it, not
Okay.
because everybody got something.
I think another problem is
It was special when you succeeded.
Right.
parents aren't home as much with their children,
No.
or around their children as much as they used to be.
Although,
Must
given some of
say-
the parents I know, that's probably a good thing.
Well, that could be too.
Okay, stop and listen to what we've been saying. I've been driving you with the question, why? When you want to explore an issue, particularly in a group, I love this term, that question in economics. Keep asking why. And it makes people keep searching and digging deeper. The bottom line is there are a whole bunch of factors at work on why we have a large segment of our young population today that are functionally unemployable. Okay? That's a fact. Now, I will tell you, at least from the economist's point of view, that's not going to change until there is sufficient incentive. When mom and dad get tired of you living with them and boot you out the door and you're out looking at literally starvation, you will then discover the value of work. And until that happens, don't expect it to change. Okay? A whole bunch of other reasons. The one that jumps in my mind always is, when you have a kid, They didn't publish the damn owner's manual. They didn't give you a guide on how do I run this damn thing, right? And so parents are making it up on their own, like they almost always did. But in the past, you had larger families, and they helped raise each other, and you had predictability when you became a parent. This is the way kids are. I remember my baby brother. When you have one or two kids in a family, I'm an only child. Guess what life was like for me when I had my son? What the hell did I do with this? Change the diaper? I don't think so. Okay? I think there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of very unknowing parents who are doing precisely the wrong things with their kids. Sometimes they're not giving them sufficient support, and sometimes they're over-supporting them, and in either case, they're just cutting their legs out from under them in terms of a work ethic and the ability to function in society. So we got that. That's a strategic human resource factor. How does that impact you and your company over the next 10 years? It means that if you're hiring among people with that level of education for, let's say, your basic level work, you're going to have a difficult time, not necessarily recruiting, but screening out those folks who will not fit in the workplace. So strategically, we start asking, how do we prepare for that? How do we function in that world where there are so many people out there? And if I'm the president of the company and you're my human resource manager or vice president, I want to be able to come to you and say, what are the strategic factors out there that are going to affect us over the next 10 years? And I would expect that I'll give you a week, and you'll come back with a litany of, 10, 15, 20 things that are going on out there, and you will be able to intelligently discuss with me how those impact our human resource management function and our ability to put the right people in the right jobs, motivated well enough to do a good caliber job. That's the strategic side of human resource management, which this article argues is growing greater and greater in importance. So if you are going to be a human resource manager, I would suggest to you that you study hard and get your certifications through the Society for Human Resource Managers, do all the administrative stuff, and know it backwards and forwards, and then spend a good bit of your time locating the journals and professional articles and read about what's going on in the world. What are the human resource professionals saying about it? What are you seeing about it? And what's going to go on? And so if I call you in to become my human resource employee, and I hear that you have aspirations to move up, one of the areas of questions I'm going to get into you with is, what do you see going on today that affects the human resource function of most businesses for the next 10 years in the United States? Can you give me 5 of them right now off the top of your head? Not the one I just discussed, the deterioration of the work ethic. What else? Give me 5.
Lack of skills. Lack of basic skills.
Lack of basic. A friend of mine went through the checkout line at a fast food store the other day, gave him 47 cents correct change. Cashier took it and didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know whether she owed her money or not. Another one went through the other day. The bill was $10.50. He took out a $20 bill and 50 cents and said, here. Could not figure it out. Lack of basic skills. That's one. Give me another one.
Time management.
What do you mean?
People don't show up on time. They always show up late, or there's always an excuse.
I think that's a combination of time management and work ethic, but yes. Okay, what else?
How do you motivate people
Well,
with all these changes? How does motivation have to change?
can I do that question in a minute by itself? How do you motivate people? Okay? I want to come back to that. But give me another macro or global factor at work on the human resource strategic view.
Distraction.
Globalization. What does globalization mean?
Well, the growing use of, the internet for the telecommunications.
Okay.
Person-to-person contact is going down. You're getting your contact with people that you would never met in your business life before.
Who come from different cultures with different languages, etc. Okay, all that under the umbrella of globalization. So therefore, ideally, your ideal even entry-level employee speaks at least 2 languages. At least, English, maybe, and something else. What else?
Limited communication skills.
Well, explain communication skills.
Kids so much today are so used to not having to interact with people face to face.
Interpersonal communication.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely agree.
So,
crying need for it.
Well, then it's kind of like distraction. There's a lot with given the internet and you know, just the advancement of like social networking and stuff. There's a lot of other things going on that distract people, like cowboys.
That's a great one. I've heard numerous complaints in different work areas of people who just, they're at work all day looking at their smartphone, texting back and forth. That's 5 good ones. Now, for each one of those, could you construct from that, how does that impact us over the next 10 years, and what can we do about it? That's the other growing side of human resource management. Okay? How do we motivate people? Any thoughts on that?
Trusting, being a positive person, I think.
Well, it depends on
Appeal
their
to
age.
their
What
personal.
Old people you can't motivate.
Nope.
How do you motivate people?
Appeal to their personal goals.
This is a
Find
biased
out
answer.
what they value most, and you use that as intrinsic and extrinsic rewards.
Okay. I think you motivate people one at a time, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, talking.
Personal.
And every person is different. Some people don't want a whole lot of that interpersonal stuff. You recognize that, and you design both their intrinsic and extrinsic rewards the best you can to satisfy their particular way of operating. That's a fairly pat answer in my mind. You motivate people just like you lead people one at a time, eyeball to eyeball. You've got to be, just as many of you did with the question on trust on the exam, the 3 things you need to build trust. I wasn't looking for any particular 3. I was looking for a good conversation. Most of you did excellent on that question. Okay? But you build trust with people one person at a time. And you've got to give as much as you get. How do you motivate people? One at a time, eyeball to eyeball, with a lot of patience. Right? Some people are not capable of doing that. Some people don't have the interpersonal skills to interact, much less diagnose. What motivates you? Let me see what I can pick up here in this conversation. And I think that's one of the most powerful questions going on. I think that's also the reason we say management, a manager, is a force multiplier. Right? What does that mean? A force multiplier. A manager is a force multiplier.
Their team is part of the outreach themselves and how they work is if you want them to work like you, so how do you make them work like you to multiply the effort and efficiency across the board.
however we impact them individually, they're going to turn around and impact other people the same way.
You may have 5 people that you directly supervise. Given the quality of your leadership and motivation, you may get the work of 1 person out of it, or you may get the work of 15 people out of it. And it's all up to you. Managers are force multipliers, positive and negatives. Most of us have worked for some of those negative types out there, right? So recognizing that you're a force multiplier and learning the best way to multiply that force in a positive manner. That's kind of the bottom line. We didn't say it out loud, where this course is trying to push you. That's also, by the way, a good line to use in a job interview. So you're interviewing for this position. You would be in charge of this department with 3 sub-departments over it. Why should we hire you? Because I'm a force multiplier. I'll take the people you've got and I will make them create more than just 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. I will demonstrate to you the synergy of leadership, where 1 + 1 = 4 or 5 or 6. Because motivated people perform more accurately with less errors. They go into areas of, phrase just jumped out of my mind, discretionary effort. They take on more than they absolutely have to if they are motivated, if they are well led. Now, that kind of an answer in a job interview, I think, you got a little bit of an advantage going for you. As opposed to, well, I need the paycheck. All right? What else on your mind? Tiempo su tiempo, right? My time is your time. We have some second language people in here? Right? What language?
I'm sorry?
What language?
Like English, my second language?
No. What is your second language?
Spanish.
Spanish, okay. Good. Then you understood what I said. I found that living overseas, the first 3 things you learned in any foreign language were to give directions to a cab driver, to count money, and to curse rather fluently at times. That's not a good way to get a conversation going.
I was thought one of the most important things to learn overseas was, where's the bathroom?
Yeah. Yeah, there are certain gestures you can make that will probably get you there, but they're somewhat revealing and embarrassing. Ask me how I know. All right, anything else?
Want to talk about meeting management?
Yeah, I'd love to. Have you done the writing assignment on meeting
Not
management?
yet. I'm working on it, but
Have any of you looked at it?
Yes.
It is set up so that this guy, Strickland, who sounds like a jerk, is calling a meeting, and he's laying down some very strict rules on here's how the meeting will go. Here's who will do what at what time, on cue, like a trained pony, do your thing, and we'll be done at such and such a time, and don't you even think about being late. Is that a way to run a meeting? That's your question. That's what you have to address. What do we know about meetings? How expensive is it to have a meeting for 5 or 10 of your people to come in and meet with you? That's also part of the writing assignment.
That can be very expensive depending on the level of management and the tasks that are not being done at that time and how long the meeting is supposed to run.
Well, here is what I think would be an easy but interesting test question, not multiple choice. How does the concept of MBWA combine with the concept of minimizing the cost of meetings?
Costs a lot less for one person to walk around and talk with people than to bring a whole bunch of people together in a group.
That's the best one-sentence answer I've heard. That's exactly right. You eliminate the need for meetings, or a lot of meetings, if you're simply out being visible and talking to people and seeing what's going on. What's the big advantage to meetings?
You have them all together to discuss things, get all the ideas together. You have
Good. It's synergistic in that they play off of one another and hopefully create more ideas, more creativity. What's another advantage to meetings?
Get it all done one time.
I say it one time, and I say it clearly, and if there's any misunderstanding, you let me know. If it's not clear, you let me know. We resolve it, you go on your way. You know? The alternative is I tell it to 15, 20 people. Even if I tell them the same thing, it's like telephone, right? They all heard something different. Okay? So there's definitely times and advantages to meetings, and if you're going to hold a meeting, recognize how much it's going to cost, and recognize not just the monetary cost to you in terms of people's times, recognize the aggravation cost to people who are coming to your meetings. Do any of you go to a regular meeting right now? Once every week, once every 2 weeks, right? Okay. Why? Oh, I know your boss told you to. Why? Why does your boss hold those regular meetings?
Discuss what's happened every day.
To discuss what happened every day.
We have 3 a day.
3 a day?
Yeah. I work for the government, can you tell?
Wow.
We have 3 every day at different levels. Yeah.
Different bosses.
We have one, now I work at a hospital, so they want to discuss what happened the night before.
Okay.
But we have one at 8 o'clock every single morning. And
That's
then-
kind of like the policeman before they go out on beat. I got that part. Okay. Keep going.
And then we'll have a second one at a higher tier
Yeah.
with what's coming, projects, what's coming down
Every
the
day.
road. Every day. Yeah. And
What do you think of that?
It's ridiculous.
is your project turnover like super quick or something? Like where you've got multiple projects going and they quickly turn over?
No, that's one of the problems. We'll discuss something that we just discussed and there's nothing new on the table. We might walk into a meeting and sit there for 5 minutes because it's like, okay, is there anything new? No. But we all stopped everything we were doing to come to a meeting to sit there and talk about nothing.
Okay.
When you could have done the same thing, even if you need to, through an email, send me any of your problems. There's a lot of other ways to do it.
So what's your third meeting?
The third meeting is the highest tier. It's
End of the day?
well, kind of that. It's budget, what we're going to do for different projects that are coming on down the
Every
road.
day you talk
Every
about
day.
it.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that on Saturday?
That's a good question.
I need to have a meeting on
Because he doesn't
inefficiency.
think that, yeah.
Let's have a meeting on meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
My husband gets called into 4-hour meetings.
4-hour meetings. Are you familiar from economics with the concept of diminishing marginal returns? Right? Let's use studying as an example. Here's how many hours you study, and here's your proficiency. And what happens? For the first 1 or 2 hours you're studying, you may start out and have to warm up, and then you're up here at your peak. And the longer you study, the more it deteriorates. And hopefully each of us discovers for ourselves, at what point does that diminishing return set in for each additional hour study? For me, I learned early on in college about 2 hours. 2.5, 3 hours tops. It's time to take a break. Go out and play. Back then we played handball, go for a run, go for beer. I don't care. We get away from it for a while, come back, and keep trying to refine this thing. Meetings, what happens? I'm going to suggest to you that after 30 minutes in any given meeting, this is going on.
Oh, yeah.
And for 30 minutes forward, you are diminishing the usefulness of the meeting and the utility of the people. You're just taking away their very reason for existence. Okay? I want you to think carefully about that assignment and critique whether that's a good or a bad way to hold a meeting. And give me an up or down. That's the way I would do it. Or, no, I don't think that's going to work. Don't give me this. Well, it could be pretty good sometimes, maybe, but only if. What is your general rule of thumb? Would you follow that kind of procedure to call a meeting or not?
Just last from maybe 30 minutes to an hour top, done, in, out, bang, have a nice day.
How often should you have a meeting?
When absolutely necessary.
When you absolutely have no other alternative. Yeah. If there's no better way to do it, and many times there isn't. Many times you need the input of all those people at one time. Many times you need to be absolutely clear that everyone absolutely understands you. But why do most managers hold regular meetings?
Because they have to.
I think there should.
Two things. One, they're insecure, and two, they're egotistical. And the two work together. They like to be, see, I'm in charge. This way I know I got control. So, and given today's technology, the ability to communicate, that has diminished the need for those meetings. Okay, next topic. Anybody? Scenario. You are in charge of 3 different departments. Research, design, and production. What kind of good would that be?
No, that's a lot for it.
Huh?
Different, they interact
That's
at
anything.
different levels.
Whether we're going to write a book, whether we're going to build lawnmowers, whether we're going to build websites, all that's got to occur. Nice and generic, okay? This is you. You are one of 15 other similar departments. And so this is boss 1, your boss. This is his boss, boss 2. Okay, and of course from all the bosses, there's all these other people and people. Within your production department, you have a manager with an assistant and 6 other people who actually do any honest-to-God work. Okay? You got the scenario?
Mm-hmm.
You've had a problem in all 3 areas, but, people coming in late to work. And you've talked to them individually and counseled them and talked to your managers. And there's a few people that still, they're just kind of sloppy. They're coming in at 8:15, 8:20, 8:30 some mornings. Workday starts at 8. You just have decided to set a policy, checked it off, and your boss said it's okay. And your policy now says if you are over 10 minutes late, for the first offense, you will receive a counseling and a letter of reprimand. For the second offense, that's first offense. For the second offense, you will again receive counseling and a letter of reprimand. And on the third offense, you are subject to, didn't guarantee it, but you are subject to getting fired. Okay? Pretty clear? Yesterday, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, this person, whose niece works down here, came to you and said, "You're an idiot," that kind of policy is so arbitrary and so harsh. That is extremely poor management. I know people, my niece is characteristic of them, who frequently get caught in traffic jams, have to take their kids to school and run into problems there. They have lots of things that go on, and this is just absolutely ludicrous. Have a nice day. And they went back. You tried to call your boss was gone.
Take it up. If I can't reach my direct higher up, I take it up and I'm
It's 4 o'clock. It's 4:30 by the time he or she finishes, and everybody's leaving. And you say to yourself, "I'll deal with this in the morning." Okay, because there's really nobody around to talk to. And if I catch my boss, this is going to take a little while to talk through. Let's let the dust settle. Let's let the adrenaline kind of reach acceptable levels. What the hell? Let's go get a drink. Okay, you go home. You come in the next day. What you going to do?
email, get a hold of anyone and everyone who needs to get a hold of. See why they
That's when you call a meeting and pull people together and.
I do not single that person out, no matter what.
Which person? The niece, you mean?
No.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, you
I
don't.
just get a hold of my upper management and say, hey, just so you know, this is what went down. I mean, I don't know that I would go and change my policy. It's not, if he's got that big of a problem with it, when I tell my boss about it, then my boss can take it up with him. But I would basically be like, thanks for your opinion, but this is my department. And
But you
this
need
is
to
already
find
been
out
signed off
why
by
everybody's running late.
No, it's not your
Because
problem.
Not really. You've already put the policy in place. The issue is dealing with a guy that's not directly in charge of you, but it's one step over.
Thanks for your opinion, but this is my division, my department.
I think everybody does.
And I would make my boss aware. I mean, I wouldn't be rude about it. I would
Say
just be
again,
like, okay.
I think each person is in their own situation. I have that at work. I had a lot of the lateness, and we did meet with each one and find out what it is that's really causing it. And we adjusted some schedules to come in at 8:30 and work to 5, so that they're not stressed trying to get there, because there is a lot of single parents now and everything that are taking care of kids, and it's very stressful. So if you get there at 5 after 8, they're already stressed out because they're late. It takes them an hour to get out of that. So we do work with them and adjust schedules.
And what I tried to do when I laid this out was say that you had had this issue in the past, you had counseled with people, etc., but it's still occurring. What I was trying to imply is you've adjusted where you can, because we know school hours, you can't fix those, okay? So, okay, there's some rigidities out there for your employees they also have to deal with, okay? What's the big issue going on here?
Yeah, they're running around and trying to overstep you. If they have a problem with it, they should have come to you.
Who in the hell do you think you are? You can't say that. And you cannot go into this in the morning. You cannot be emotional. Okay? But nobody, and if you're up here someday, you too, don't jump that chain of command, that chain of structure, to come down and get in people's face. You have no authority down there. Okay? You may be a senior person, but you're not the boss of me. Okay? That's the big issue here, is that this person thinks they can come running down into other departments and tell them how to operate or critique them. The solution to that is back up through the chain, rationally, unemotionally, and with great clarity. I don't want you, I'm going to be your boss. I don't want you coming in and giving me 45 minutes of litany about all the problems you've had and how this is going. No. Come in and tell me what happened, make it clear, and ask me, now what should I do? Okay? And if your boss says, well, that's just the way he is, brush up your resume. Because this is not going to be a friendly ground to play on. Right?
Nope.
But for most people, most bosses are going to say, let me take that on up to my boss and let's see if we can't resolve this. You do not, particularly from the higher levels, jump the chain of command. Okay? Now, as far as all these issues about the policy, I like Patty's comment that let's deal with it like a leader, right? One-on-one, eyeball to eyeball, one at a time, let's see what's going on. And if we can make some reasonable adjustments and accommodations, fine. And if we can't, then you will get your tired Fanny out of bed half an hour earlier every day, and you will be to work.
That's
Okay.
part of that counseling though, isn't it?
Hmm?
That's part of that counseling.
Oh, yeah,
One-
absolutely. Absolutely. Given your situation, if we can make reasonable adjustments, fine, and if we can't, then it's up to you. You can either do this job or you can't.
And you have to, I mean, actually ran into this problem at work where I had people who went out and made reservations and vacation plans and all this stuff, and then came back and told me, oh, I'm taking this week off. And I'm like, no, you're not. I've already got 2 people out. And so I wound up, because there was no clear-cut policy, I basically said, okay, fine, whatever, I'll suck it up, I'll work by myself and deal with it. But after that, there was a clearly written policy, and the first day that every new employee walks into my office, I say, here is our leave policy. If you have any questions, let's talk about it now.
Perfect. That's where policies come from. Things get screwed. Same way laws, right? People abuse the system. We have to find ways to preclude that. Okay? Let me turn it around. The niece went to her uncle or aunt, whining and crying, and then they came down by going through the chain. Went to him, went to him, went to you.
And these is no longer going to be working for me. They're going to be moved to another department. I would transfer them quick as crap. I don't want that problem. I don't want that conflict of interest.
Well, in the government, that's called whistleblowing.
I will
Be careful.
destabilize everything that I have going on with the rest of my department, and that'll give preferential treatment to that one employee, and everyone else will want that treatment as well, and I can't be able to afford that treatment.
And at the same time, that's where all your documentation comes into.
Document, and then do whatever I can to get
So what
them
is-
out from underneath me.
Top boss say to middle boss.
Well, he comes over here and says, did you hear about Strickland's policy down there, that jerk? And he says to his boss, did you hear about that policy? Go check it out. And he comes to your boss, and your boss says, no, they don't like your policy. Okay? The issue right here is this.
Yep.
Okay?
Follow the chain of command.
Once again, we've jumped outside the chain of command. And you may not have the latitude to punish that person. And in fact, that may not be a very smart thing to do. Right? How are you going to handle it? You cannot discriminate against them from here on out just because you're mad at them.
No. You document.
You don't have to make their life easy either.
I mean,
You
I
keep your
definitely
eyes and
think
ears
that there
open
needs to
and
be
you
some
document.
sort of, between you and middle boss and niece, y'all all three need to get together and say, okay, this is, what exactly is the problem? And next time it would be probably better if you came straight to me and we could have probably worked this out, rather than, with politically correct.
I understand the principle and I agree with it. The reality is you have got to have that person's trust before they're going to come to you. So day one, you start building that trust, right? I think absolutely. Now, what would you do the next morning, 8 o'clock? You didn't do anything that night. You just heard down through the chain that they didn't like your policy, and you knew that she'd gone out there talking to her uncle.
Well, I go talk to my boss and email him, and then it'll go right back.
Okay, we'll have an understanding, and the boss comes down and says, I still like your policy, that's fine. How are you going to deal with this niece?
I'm gonna bring her in and talk to her.
With
Correctly, but I'm gonna say, I understand you have a problem, let's talk about the problem. Once you talk about the problem, I'm gonna say, if you have any problems in the future, can you come to me directly so we go up through the chain of command, because when you go above me like that, it creates problems you may not even be aware of.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't you want to speak with our direct manager as well? Because isn't that his
Well, you
role?
mark it.
You definitely want that
Oh,
person
wait,
in the
you have-
in the
yeah,
communication
you're right.
route. I think Eric's got an interesting point, too. You want your boss in on that sit-down session.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You bet you do.
I would probably want my boss's boss, since they're on the same level as
Could be.
mom.
Could be. And there's
I'd have multiple people to CYA myself, so that I'm not singling that person out. This is not a reprimand. This is more of a, please don't do
Root
this
cause
again.
This is a.
Let's understand how the system works. I'm not trying to punish you. I understand your concerns. Please come to me. And if you ever feel like you can't, first off, go to your boss. If you ever feel like you can't go talk to her, come talk to me. And if you ever feel like you can't talk to either one, then go to my boss. Okay? Just work your way up. But honestly, and you got to say yourself, I'm not going to penalize you. If you've got an issue, come in and talk to me. Let me tell you what happened. This is from a real world experience, fairly recent. This happened more or less. This person then screamed down here at this person and basically said, "You're not supervising your people carefully enough." And then told his boss, who also said, "You're not supervising your people. You got to keep an eye on those people. They shouldn't be going around talking about us this way." This is called management by paranoia, right? These people are terrified of anybody talking about them outside the chain. What do we know about is going on today? Somebody said communication, right? Don't you think your people are talking about you 24/7?
Oh, yes.
Damn Skippy. Get used to it and don't do anything. You know, what's the rule for, how does it go? Who you really are as a parent when you're, by what you do when you don't think no one's looking, right? Somebody's always looking. So be open. Don't, that doesn't mean reveal everything, but never be ashamed to say, "Come on in, tell me what I did wrong." We have this problem at Santa Fe frequently with students. Instead of going to their instructor, they will go to Dr. Sasser's office and work their way down the food chain. And fortunately, most of our administrators out here are very familiar with that phenomenon. And so they deal with it very rationally, and they send the student back to the instructor or to the department chair or whatever. But it goes on all the time when people down at this level feel like they're out of control and being taken advantage of. You've got to be prepared to deal with that without emotion.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Something
That's
we've
what-
had to work on a lot.
That's why we don't react, if we humanly can, we don't react at the moment that it occurs. Okay. What else?
Well, let's continue on with that conversation then.
Sure.
Don't react in that moment if you can. What if you don't have a choice? I tend to kind of be one of those ones that I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's something that I've really struggled with. And I've gotten a lot better, but in that heat of the moment, sometimes my emotions get to me.
And
So, what are some other coping mechanisms or ways to circumvent that or work on that?
any number of, excuse me just a second, I can call. Yeah? No, I'm in class right now. There's nobody on my phone. What did I just do? I interrupted things to give myself time to cool down. Right? We can develop little techniques like that, right? Sometimes you've got to face it right on, and sometimes your emotions are going to be in control of you and you're going to lose.
I've been in that situation before, and I just stop talking and I walk away, and then my boss is coming to me, "What's wrong with you? Are you angry? Are you angry?" Like, you really just need to leave me alone for a while, but they pick up on that too. So.
If you're with a group of people who know you and reasonably trust you, you have other visual signals, If you see me put this hat on, go away. Leave me alone for a few minutes, okay, please? If you see me put this hat on, that means I'm busy. Please don't interrupt me. We work at every little technique like that we can to forestall that confrontation. What's happening basically is, for all of us, we get, what do you want to call it, an impulse or a signal, and then we get a reaction. And what we're trying to do is stretch that line out and make it longer and longer. And with practice, you can do it. My best example is driving in traffic, when people make you angry. At some point, you get to the stage where when this happens, you go up here and you're watching yourself behave. Honestly, it happens. And you're watching yourself saying, "No, what are you going to do now, smartass?" And then when you finally do something, if you succeed, you'll remember it from up here. If you lose control and you react emotionally, you lose. You do that enough times, you either learn or you don't learn. If you don't learn, you're pretty well not going much further. You and we've all worked for managers that are emotional, right? And sometimes overreactive. Sure, you want to keep working there? Nobody else does either. That's the best answer I got. I'm up here tap dancing, so. Anything else? We meet again in 2 weeks. By bringing up the idea of the networking competency, and then talking about writing assignment 4, particularly since it's not due yet. I hope that's beneficial, and I would encourage you, next time we meet, any kind of assignments that are still out in front of you, bring them into class and share your thoughts with me, or with us, and let's knock it around a little bit. Okay? Anything else? The Mass is ended. Go in peace. Bye.